you're choosing your ego over growth. You're choosing to ignore this truth, this fact, in order for you to feel good today. But the problem is that tomorrow you're going to be doing the same damn thing again. Self-improvement is a burden. Growth is a burden. I've delved deep into this in a previous episode on how improvement leads you to feel something that we don't really want to feel, which is shame. Let me explain. Let's say you're at work and you've been doing the same thing for 2 years, a particular way. And then someone comes along and talks to you and they tell you, hey, I know you've been doing it this way for 2 years, but the way you do this is actually not right, and it causes us some issues on our end. So I'm just going to let you know how we would prefer you to do it. Now, that exchange, if you were to look at that logically, you would say, oh, perfect, now I can do the thing right. However, what a lot of us feel when we're confronted with such a situation is embarrassment, shame. Because we think about how long over the course of 2 years, how many times we've screwed this up, how many times we've made a dumb mistake, how many times on the other end, the other person who has to view our work is thinking, God, they did it again. And so improvement, growth, requires typically a little bit of embarrassment and a little bit of shame. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way. And it doesn't mean that in order for you to grow, you always have to have shame. However, as you develop and as you learn and as you grow, what you'll notice is that, of course, through the process of growing, is that there are things that you know now that you're aware of that you will do going forward that you didn't know before. And that's a burden, because every time you get an incremental improvement, by definition, you are making yourself better than you were yesterday, and hence, the things that you are doing today are wiser than the things that you were doing yesterday. And so you have an unlimited mass of things that you can point out and laugh at yourself about and feel ashamed and feel embarrassed. And this is why I think a lot of people simply don't move forward. They don't move forward because in order for you to move forward means admitting that where you are right now, who you are right now, we're talking about this in terms of character, which is stoicism. Who you are right now is not good enough. That's right. For you to pick up a philosophy book, for you to do some deep work, for you to journal, for you to review your day, you have to accept that there are instances, that there are situations, that there are virtues that you are not perfect at. And that requires death of ego, which is painful, but ultimately leads to growth. So we can all look back and take a high-level view at our past, and we can think, yeah, I'm happy who I am. I'm happy with who I am today, more or less. And growth was a good thing for me. But then you turn around, and when someone comes up to you and says, hey, you're doing something not right, you get a little embarrassed and you get a little shameful, and you don't want to go through that. That's the initial resistance that you feel. All to say that self-improvement, yes, it is a burden. Growth is a burden. And it's why a lot of people simply don't do it. A lot of people just stay in the same place, stay as the same person. They don't improve their character. They don't move up in work. They stay stagnant for large portions of their life, because in order for you to become someone new, you have to accept that who you are is not good enough, that you could be more. And so I'm going to propose a framing that I found very useful in getting through that. But the first thing to note before I get into that is, again, you have to be willing to have some negative emotions when it comes to growth. It's not like you learn about a flaw of yours and then you're going to be happy about it. Of course not. You have to accept that for you to learn about your flaws, that you're going to have to experience negative emotions. That can be shame, embarrassment, the ones we've talked about. Sometimes it's anger, depending on what it is. Sometimes people's response is anger. And of course, your response is in your control. But these initial feelings, they are not. And so you have to accept that you're going to have to get through that. You're going to experience that as part of that development. And so that's step one. Now, let's say you're confronted with one of these things that we are talking about. A very, very useful framing is delayed gratification. That meaning, when would you rather feel bad? So, you're confronted with something. You have a choice. You have a choice when someone comes to you with truth or when you learn about one of your flaws. You have a choice. And the choice is, I can ignore this. I can be blissfully ignorant. And by being blissfully ignorant, I'm being blissful, but I'm also being ignorant. And so that's a choice. You're choosing to not live in truth. And the Stoics would say that's not a very good thing because you can only bend the fabric of reality so much before it snaps back. Hey there. Let me thank you for being a listener to this ad-free podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, there are a few things you can do to help me out. A 5-star review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this really does help, and it's free. You can also sign up for my Substack newsletter or Patreon. Substack free gets each episode emailed to you along with the transcripts in the form of an article. You'll also get access to my live talks, followed by a Q&A afterward. Substack Premium supporters and my patrons on Patreon get access to the recordings and a brief article of those Q&A sessions, access to full episodes of the Paradoxically Speaking podcast, my Steps to Success interview series, Stoic meditations, and much more. Links to Substack and Patreon can be found in the show notes. Reality is not very malleable. If you try and live against it, eventually it's going to snap back. You can live in a reality in your mind that driving is not dangerous and it's never going to have any risk associated with it and you're never going to get hurt or get into an accident. You can live in that false reality, but that's not a reality. And at some point in time, normally, life will snap back and remind you of the brutal reality that we are all vulnerable. And so when do you want to feel bad? Would you rather feel good today, but be no better tomorrow? Or would you rather feel bad today and be better tomorrow? That's your choice. Those are your options. You can either accept that I'm missing the mark and feel those negative emotions that come along with that and then use them to motivate you towards positive action. Or you can be blissfully ignorant. I would rather feel bad today and be a better person tomorrow than feel good today, living in falsehood, and regress my character tomorrow. Because here's the thing. Once you become conscious of something, once information is brought to you, it then becomes your duty to face that truth and deal with it. If for 2 years you've been doing something at work that isn't right and nobody's really said anything and it's never a big deal and you just don't know and it's not written in a policy anywhere, it's just something that you're not doing the best that you should be, in some sense, you're absolved because, well, you didn't know any better. But then if somebody comes to you and they tell you that you're doing something wrong and your response is, well, I always do it this way. I've always done it this way. Nobody's ever said anything about this. I'm just going to keep doing it my way. You're choosing your ego over growth. You're choosing to ignore this truth, this fact, in order for you to feel good today. But the problem is that tomorrow you're going to be doing the same damn thing again. You're going to be wrong again and again and again and again on into infinity because you're never willing to accept the truth, which is painful. I'll say it again. I would rather feel bad today and be better tomorrow than feel good about myself today in ignorance and be worse tomorrow. Because when you're confronted with that information and you choose to ignore it, at that point, you're no longer absolved. You're no longer absolved because the truth has been brought to you and you are choosing not to see it or you're choosing to be ignorant to it. You are not acting on it. And so then it does actually become vice. Now, yes, if you are doing something wrong morally, wisdom is a virtue, therefore foolishness is a vice. And so, yes, of course, you have to consider that. You have to be wise. But we do tend to get away with a little bit more when we are ignorant, as opposed to when we knowingly do wrong. The cosmos tends to punish people a little more harshly when we knowingly do wrong. And it's perhaps because of some cosmopolitan idea or, fate. But I think it's our consciousness. I think deep down we know, we feel that when we do something knowingly wrong, our daemon speaks to us and we know it, and therefore our consciousness has to deal with that reality. When we are ignorant to something, when we simply don't know, it's not that we're necessarily morally absolved. It's still a vice because it's not wise. However, consciously, we didn't know about it. So the universe seems to let us away with it a little bit more, which is a very encouraging thought. So to wrap this up, confront truth with courage. Don't shy away from it. Face it. Be willing to feel bad, because guess what? Feelings are not virtue. And you get to choose your response, regardless of what your feelings are. So stop labeling in your mind feelings as being bad. And thirdly, be willing to feel those feelings, those bad feelings. Be willing to feel shame, embarrassment. Be willing to destroy a little piece of your ego. Not because you deserve to be punished or anything like that, but because you deserve to flourish. And the only way you can flourish is by having a good character. And the only way you can have your good character is if you're willing to experience growth, get through it, and by learning from today, become better for tomorrow.